no one knows where the stones excavated from this place went. We're talking tons and tons of stone that needed to be removed from each cave. Imagine the scale of this place. There are 24 caves in total, and this is just one. Whoever built the Longyou Caves had advanced knowledge of today's technology. I can't even imagine a moment like the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. I can't even guess what these caves were used for. Maybe they were used for what some are used for today, filled with water and giant fish, as a breeding ground. Or maybe something happened, and we were so afraid of it happening again that we created an ancient shelter. You'd only do something like this if you had to, right? People don't dig into the earth like moles. There are so many mysteries here. If you're looking for answers, you've come to the right place. For thousands of years, the Longyou Caves were lost in the depths of time and history. No one even knew such a cave existed. Until one day, a curious local from Xi'an village decided to test a popular legend. Everyone who grew up in Xi'an knew the legend of the bottomless ponds. These were 5 small ponds scattered around the village, and their depths were said to be as deep as the ocean. For years, villagers would try to find the bottom of the ponds with long sticks, but to no avail. The ponds just kept going down, as if they stretched into infinity. Then one day, someone in the village caught a very large fish that only lived in deep waters. This made people wonder how deep the ponds really were. A man named Wu Anai decided it was time to get to the bottom of these legends. On June 9, 1992, Wu Anai, along with 3 other villagers, set out to pump all the water out of these so-called bottomless ponds. However, what he discovered after almost 3 weeks of continuous pumping was very different from what he expected. As Wu Anai had guessed, the bottomless ponds did have a bottom, but this bottom was completely different from what the farmer had in mind. After completely emptying one of the ponds, Wu Anai was astonished to see a daylight-filled roof with a massive, man-made cave right underneath. We're talking about an area of 3,350 square meters and a terrifying height of 30 meters, which is the height of a 10-story building. Imagine that height for a pond. Now stop for a moment and put yourself in Wu Anai's shoes. As you enter these caves, you become the first modern human to set foot on this inexplicable phenomenon. The first thing that catches your eye are the tool marks on the cave walls. Everywhere you look, from the walls to the columns to the ceiling, parallel lines following the same pattern have been drawn. You wonder if it's a code or just someone's weird taste in art. As you walk silently deeper into the cave, you're not sure who or what lived here. You count the columns. There are only a few in the cave, each about 50 centimeters thick. The fact that they're so thin makes you wonder how the roof hasn't collapsed. This leads you to the next puzzle. How long has this cave been standing here? Apparently, this cave looks like it was built yesterday. Everything looks brand new. There's no sign of damage anywhere. But then, you think, if this cave was built recently, why haven't you heard of it before? There are no legends, no folktales, no rumors. Xi'an is a small village after all, and it would be absolutely impossible to keep such a big project a secret. So, why doesn't anyone know about this place? While you're preoccupied with these thoughts, your eyes drift to the stairs. The stairs are much steeper than traditional stairs, as if they were made for giants. But before you try to make sense of that, other interesting features start to catch your attention. Stone rooms, bridges, gutters, pools, and the fact that there are 23 more caves like this. When the news about the Longyou Caves finally spread, experts from all over the world came to the scene. They were ready to unravel the answers they believed were hidden within the cave walls. Unfortunately for them, the Longyou Caves, instead of providing answers, only posed more riddles. Archaeologists working on the Longyou Caves agree that these caves were most likely built during the Western Han Dynasty, between 206 BC and 23 AD. This dates the construction of the caves to about 2,000 years ago. But what's even stranger is that there are no records about the construction of these caves. I'll explain what this means later in the video. For now, we have another puzzle to solve first. How were these caves built in the first place? The Longyou Caves are such a big mystery that there are dozens of theories about their origin, existence, and purpose. So, to save time, we'll focus only on the most popular and most plausible theories. Our first theory will focus on the construction of the Long Yu Caves, while the others will focus on the purpose of the caves, which is the most debated part. Without further ado, let's get started. Some claim that the Long Yu Caves were built using machines, because they believe that such an impressive engineering feat could not have been achieved with human power alone. And this is a really interesting point, because when you compare the tool marks on the walls of the Long Yu Caves with the marks made by modern mining and tunneling machines, the similarity is incredibly high. Could this be the work of an ancient civilization with advanced technology, now lost in the depths of time? The Anunnaki, perhaps? We all know now that the Sumerians, who lived in ancient Mesopotamia, were the leaders when it came to human civilization. Almost all the historical milestones that humans have reached first occurred in Sumer. Writing, agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, science, medicine, the army, urban planning, schools, transportation, and yes, construction. The origin of all these lies in Sumer, and the Sumerians thank the Anunnaki for all these advancements. If you think about it, this theory could perfectly explain why there are no historical records about the construction of the Long Yu Caves. Because these caves were not built 2,000 years ago, but 6,000 years ago, by an advanced race that provided humanity with all the developments we have now. This means that the Han Dynasty did not build the caves or even know about the existence of these caves. That's why no matter how meticulous they were about record keeping, they didn't record the construction of the Long Yu Caves. Because they didn't know about the caves, the grandeur of the Long Yu Caves has led some to believe that this place may have been built as a palace or a unique living space for an emperor. This could explain the meticulous work in making all the patterns on the walls, the vast space, and all the craftsmanship that went into the construction of the caves. When you look at the Long Yu Caves, you get the feeling that no expense was spared in this project. And if an emperor had this built for himself as a palace, it would make perfect sense. One remarkable thing about the Long Yu Caves is that they were built under what is now known as Fangzhang Hill. This is important because Fangzhang is a sacred and revered creature in Chinese mythology. As you can see, Fangzhang looks a lot like a phoenix. But the part that matters to us is this. It symbolizes the unity of yin and yang, and also the 6 celestial bodies, including the sky, the sun, the moon, the wind, the earth, and the planets. Not only that, but Fangzhang is also associated with royalty and rebirth. This suggests that the reason the Long Yu Caves were built under Fangzhang Hill may be because it was considered auspicious. This wouldn't be surprising, because in ancient times, important projects were built in carefully chosen locations. The people who built the Long Yu Caves may have believed that Fangzhang Hill contained a special divine energy that would make rituals acceptable or help their dead have a peaceful transition to the afterlife. There are 2 different interpretations of this theory. Some say that the Long Yu Caves were used as a secret place for military strategy. According to the story, a certain emperor in Chinese history wanted to make secret war plans and keep his soldiers hidden, so he ordered the construction of the Long Yu Caves. Others disagree somewhat with this narrative. According to Yang Hongshun, a researcher at the Institute of Archaeology of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, the Long Yu Caves were built in 494 BC by order of King Gujian. Yang Hongzun believes that Gujian suffered a crushing defeat in battle and therefore had the Long Yu Caves built so that he and his soldiers could hide from the shame of defeat. This theory has recently started to gain popularity among experts and amateur archaeologists. And to be honest, of all the theories about the purpose of the Long Yu Caves, this one seems the most likely, even though its logic has its own fatal flaw. For starters, the shape of the Long Yu Caves makes them a perfect choice for cistern systems. The bottom of the cave is very wide to hold as much water as possible, but the top is quite narrow to reduce water loss due to evaporation. Of course, this alone is not enough evidence. But consider this. Around 200 BC, when the Long Yu Caves are believed to have been built, the world experienced a global drought. Even more interesting, engineers who studied the Long Yu Caves say that the reason the caves were able to maintain their structural integrity for so long is because they were filled with water. In other words, the water supported the roof of the caves and prevented them from collapsing. That's why, now that all the water has been pumped out, the government had to install some supports for the roof of the caves. So could this be the end of the Longyou Caves mystery? Not quite. As I told you earlier, this theory, like all the others, has a fatal flaw. Now let's examine them one by one. The theory that the Longyou Caves were built about 6,000 years ago by an ancient civilization with lost technology seems pretty credible, to be honest. It could explain the highly sophisticated engineering involved in the construction of the caves, why the caves are not mentioned in ancient Chinese records, and all the tool marks on the cave walls. Unfortunately, the general consensus is that these tool marks were made by hand, not by machines. In fact, take a look at this video showing a stonemason making the same marks on stone using a chisel, and then look at a picture of the Longyou Caves. They're exactly the same. The marks in the Longyou Caves may look like they were made by modern machines, but experts who look closely at the marks agree that the marks in the Longyou Caves were made by hand. Otherwise, how would you explain the discovery of some chisels in one of the caves during the excavation? By the way, if these marks were made by hand, this indirectly refutes the Anunnaki theory as well, because the Anunnaki were literally gods with super advanced knowledge of everything. Why would they build the Longyou Caves by hand? Yes, the Anunnaki building. The Longyou Caves could explain why the Chinese have no record of the construction of these caves, but it doesn't explain why there are no legends or tales about these caves in history. Did the Anunnaki build these massive caves for humans without telling us or leaving any clues? When it comes to the purpose of the Longyou Caves, most of the popular theories fall victim to the fact that the caves were completely empty when they were discovered. There was nothing in any of the caves to indicate any activity. This rules out the palace theory, the tomb theory, and the sanctuary theory. The Longyou Caves couldn't have been any of these, because no matter how hard archaeologists tried, they couldn't find any evidence of habitation. Also, there were no grave goods, no artifacts that could have been used for religious rituals, no ancient objects, nothing. Then maybe it could have been a military hideout. Wrong again. Wartime is a very fast-paced time. No king would interrupt the middle of a war to embark on such a massive project in the name of war preparations. It doesn't make sense strategically. First, the emperor loses many healthy men to construction work when they could be serving in the army. Second, the construction of these caves took years. If an emperor really ordered the construction of the caves as a strategic move, he and his army would have been destroyed long before the caves were completed. Also, it's impossible to keep such a large construction project a secret. So if the plan was to build a secret staging area, that plan would fail before it even started. What's more, as I said before, there's no sign of anyone living in any of the caves. Perhaps the storage theory is the weakest of all the theories. It doesn't make sense to store food and weapons in a cave that would easily fill with water when it rains. This brings us to the cistern theory. Maybe the Longyou Caves were cisterns. However, even with this theory, there are still a number of question marks. The biggest one is, why were chisel marks made all over the caves? If the caves were only going to be used as cisterns, why bother to carve these lines by hand? Also, if the caves were only going to be used as cisterns, why was so much effort put into removing the 1 million cubic meters of excavated stone? And what about the stairs? Since a cistern would always be full of water, why were stairs added? Frankly, if you're really building a cistern, that's a strange feature to add. Of course, maybe the Longyou Caves weren't built to hold water. Maybe they were built for a completely different purpose. You've seen the caves, you've heard the theories. So, did I miss anything? At this point in the documentary, it's a great opportunity to interact with the audience, get their ideas, and maybe even get them to come up with some new theories. This mystery is still waiting to be solved, and maybe the answer is right under our noses.